Hey, welcome back. It's a Money Monday edition of Liquid Lunch on Newsmax TV. I'm John TABACCO. Coming to you today as we do every day, noon to 2 Eastern on Newsmax. But today we're not in the Newsmax headquarters in Midtown Manhattan. We are in downtown Manhattan on Broadway. I'm joined again for the rest of this second hour with my co-host, Frank Morano. Frankie, unbelievable stuff from Patrick Byrne. I mean, he can go, was really getting deep there. We're going to have to sift through it, but that was pretty wild.
Absolutely, and if people didn't get a chance to see it, they should definitely be sure to watch our YouTube clips, Liquid Lunch TV, when we upload those a little bit later. But with the UN coming to town, and that's one of the reasons we moved out of Midtown today, because there's just horrible traffic congestion. It's taking place under the aftermath of in the midst of this Ukraine whistleblower drama. A lot of people, and this is what we're going to be talking with former impeachment manager Barr about, a lot of people are calling for President Trump to be impeached or investigated. One of those people calling for an investigation was our former Secretary of State, John F. Kerry. This was John F. Kerry yesterday on CBS's Face the Nation.
Well, take our word for Kerry from Face the Nation.
Take our word for it that John...
I can tell you this. I saw John Kerry this morning on Morning Joke, and he looks like he got about 50 pounds of Botox in his face. He doesn't even look like the same person.
See, I heard it on radio, so I can't judge.
Yeah, no. I mean, he looks like, what are the two guys' name in the balcony there on...
Waldorf and Statler.
He looks like one of them, like he's just all puffed out, like a Muppet or a puppet.
So it's a pretty complicated story, and I'm not sure I understand it because we still haven't seen the complaint that this whistleblower has made. As we understand it, the whistleblower had nothing to do with this conversation, was not a party to it. But apparently what's being alleged is that Donald Trump had a conversation with the new president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and basically implied, there was no direct quid pro quo, but he implied that that American aid would get to Ukraine a whole lot faster if they would bring back that investigation into Joe Biden's son Hunter, who was associated with an energy company that had some business in Ukraine.
And a lot of people are calling for Frankie. I'm nursing a little bit of a cold here, but now here's the weird thing. I heard Joe Biden today, a clip from a couple years back about how Joe Biden was over in Ukraine and he was supposed to sign $1 billion in loan guarantees. And he said, hey, you got this prosecutor over here who's looking into corruption and I want him replaced. And so it turns out that this prosecutor that good old crazy Uncle Joe wanted replaced just happened to be investigating his son's company, who had just got billions of dollars worth of business in the Ukraine. And he says in the clip, well, I'm going to be here another 6 hours, and you either get rid of that guy who's investigating my son, or you're not getting $1 billion in loan guarantees. And that, to me, Frankie, sounds a heck of a lot like obstruction of justice that, the president was being accused of.
Well, I'll tell you, if what's being alleged here on both sides is true, it's pretty significant. If Joe Biden abused his office in order to get his son a free pass on a corruption probe, that's pretty significant. If Donald Trump tied American aid to Ukraine being willing to soil a political foe, that's pretty significant. And you'd like to think that neither of these things happened. Hopefully that's not the case.
Well, it sounds like, hey, we think here in the Trump administration that Joe Biden abused his power. So
a lot of people are calling for impeachment now. Even Adam Schiff, who's been reluctant to use the I word, he's saying we may have to go down this road. A guy that knows a thing or two about impeachment is the former impeachment manager during the Clinton impeachment, former Georgia Republican Congressman Barr. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us today.
So Barr is joining us on Skype.
Jennifer?
Hi, Congressman. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you just fine. Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. So In a nutshell, tell us why you think this latest bid to impeach Donald Trump over purportedly misusing his office with respect to Ukraine is different than the impeachment you led against Bill Clinton.
The impeachment is, like night and day, apples and oranges, so to speak. With regard to the impeachment of Bill Clinton, there were specific crimes, and we accumulated over a course of hearings and the Starr report extensive specific evidence that the president had violated federal laws, and that led to his impeachment by the House. With regard to the case that appears to now be on the Democrats' radar, that is this Ukraine gate issue, there is absolutely nothing, as far as I can tell, that would rise to the level of even approaching a crime or a serious offense by the president. If you assume everything that the Democrats allege is true, and we can't know that for sure now at all, there still is nothing there. The president apparently had a conversation with a foreign leader. Apparently somebody in his administration who seems not to like him went running to the Inspector General for the intelligence community with apparently secondhand information that alleged that the president tied some aid to the Ukraine with the Ukraine government looking into misdeeds between Joe Biden's son and an oil company or government-run oil concern in the Ukraine. None of it makes any sense to me in terms of an impeachable offense. I mean, it's not even a close call. It's just more the same crying wolf by the Democrats. Every time you turn around, they're crying wolf, crying impeachment, and frankly, I think a lot of people are getting tired of it.
Hey, Congressman Barr, I want to thank you for joining us again. But isn't it? We have our own presidential historian here on the show, Columbia Professor David Eisenbach, who's quite the progressive, and even he admitted on the show that with a Republican Senate, the continued din of an impeachment is just a waste of time. None has ever gone through and been passed by both sides. And the Senate has indicated over and over that they're not going to vote for impeachment. So isn't this just a heck of a lot of waste of U.S. taxpayers' time and money?
It certainly is that. My concern, though, is not what the Senate may or may not do, although from a practical standpoint, you're absolutely correct. My concern is there any legitimate basis for what the Democrats in the House, and particularly on the House Judiciary Committee, are looking at in terms of impeachment? If there were, in fact, serious evidence that President Trump had violated federal laws or otherwise had engaged in very serious official offenses while in office, then fine, go ahead and inquire into that. But thus far, I've seen nothing that rises even close to the level of an impeachable offense in the first place.
Well, it's going to be interesting, Congressman, if people are just tuning in. We're talking with former Congressman Bob Barr. In addition to being the former Libertarian candidate for president as well, he's also the president of the Law Enforcement Education Foundation. It's going to be interesting to see what the Republicans end up doing. I mean, we saw with President Nixon's impeachment that because the Republicans were quick to abandon him, he really had little hope of survival. So as this unfolds and as we start to hear murmurs from people like Mitt Romney talking about how serious this is, I hope we can still keep using you to chronicle it.
I mean, yes, the president certainly, even within his own party, has people that either don't like him or are wishy-washy on various things, like Senator Romney. But still, my focus is on the House. That's where we ought to be looking, not in the Senate, because their responsibility, if it arises at all, would be after the House were to impeach the president.
Thank you.
I don't see anything in the House that rises to the level of impeachment.
Thank you, Congressman. I hope we can talk with you again soon. It's always a pleasure.
Bob Barr, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Stay right there. Take a quick break. Coming back right after this with Pavlina Osta.